because when the doctor has their hand on the door and they're just about to leave, that's when the patient says, oh, and by the way, I'm not sleeping. And then the doctor usually pulls out the prescription pad and says, Ambien or Trazodone or something like that, writes it up, says, here, come back in 30 days. Well, you haven't really done anything for this person. You've handed them a pill, and by the way, now they're probably either psychologically or physiologically addicted to said pill, right? Now, once again, if you've got a major mental health issue, I don't think I care. I think it's okay for you to have your Ambien and be fine.
And a lot of people that do have insomnia have depression.
Oh, I think it's one of the biggest things that we see. But I would argue anxiety might be a little bit more than depression. But yes, anxiety and depression, I would argue, make up 75% of insomnia at any given time, right? I work with people and I do something called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which you correctly identified as CBTI, right? And so I work with patients all the time, and that's exactly what we do is we reschedule them. So that's the behavioral part. And then the cognitive part is we talk to them about how do you think about sleep? Because a lot of people think about sleep in disastrous ways. They're like, if I don't get 8 hours, my whole day is screwed and everything's gonna happen. It rarely happens that way. Like, it's called catastrophizing. You just make it worse and worse and worse. And so we look at those cognitive distortions and we help fix them in therapy by really kind of what I call doing the math. And so I say, well, have you ever had 4 hours of sleep? Yes. Did you do something terrible the next day? No. So where's your evidence? Right? And you start to get people to challenge themselves, and all of a sudden they can kind of get there. There's also another area of that a lot of people go to somewhere in between the pills and therapy, and that's supplementation. So there's a lot of people out there who like to use supplements and try to understand how to fix, quote, their insomnia with supplementation. So if we can, let's talk a little bit about supplements and sort of what's good and what's bad.
What is the difference between a supplement and a pill? Or are you talking about the same thing here?
So under the context of this conversation, a supplement is a non-FDA regulated thing that you can purchase at any drugstore. And a pill is a by prescription only from a doctor.
Okay.
That's how we're going to make the distinction for this particular conversation.
Okay. So those pills that are in front of you
So
there.
right in front of me, these are actually all supplements. So these are different things. So these are not pharmaceuticals. These are different things. So we've got...
I mean, in different countries, it's different, right?
Great point. So let's talk about melatonin, since that's kind of the biggie that a lot of people like to know about. So number one, melatonin is by prescription only almost everywhere other than the United States, right? So in England, in Australia, in Europe, you can't just walk into the drugstore and buy melatonin, and there's a reason. A lot of people don't realize it, but melatonin is a hormone. There's a reason you can't go to the CVS and get testosterone and estrogen, right? Because hormones affect the entire system. They affect almost 300 different things in your body. So what you don't want to do is have somebody just willy-nilly grabbing a hormone and starting to pop it without somebody understanding what's going on with it. More importantly, melatonin in particular, and the point I wanted to make earlier about depression, melatonin interacts with all SSRI medication. An SSRI is a serotonin-specific reuptake inhibitor, an antidepressant. So things like Prozac, Zoloft, Celexa, all of those are medications that will be affected by melatonin ingestion, and nobody knows that it is. In addition, melatonin affects birth control. Yes, you heard it here. Birth control. It affects blood pressure medication, and it affects diabetes medication. So one of the problems is that people go into the local drugstore and they're like, I'm gonna grab some melatonin and I'm gonna make my sleep better because I'm sleeping poorly. So first of all, that's not what melatonin does. Melatonin is a sleep regulator, not a sleep initiator. Melatonin doesn't affect sleep drive. Melatonin affects sleep rhythm. So remember in the beginning of our conversation, we're talking about the two systems. Melatonin only affects your brain telling it when it's time to go to bed. It does not make you sleepy. That's adenosine. We already talked about adenosine and caffeine and how similar their molecular structures are. So when you look at something like melatonin, you need to really be thoughtful about using it. Number two, melatonin is not to be used in children, okay? So a lot of people are like, Michael, I've got pediatricians all over the country telling me to give my children melatonin. I'm gonna say it right here in front of everybody. That is the dumbest idea I have heard in a long time, because you just taught your child that they need a pill to sleep. Normally, no child needs pills to sleep. And by the way, most children make almost 4 times the amount of melatonin that their brain even needs. So giving them extra melatonin doesn't do you any good. There is, however, one group of children where melatonin does work well, and that's in kids on the autism spectrum. We don't know exactly why, but or at least I don't, but there is data to suggest that at 5, 6, 7 milligrams, that can be very helpful for them. Dosage also is a problem. Like if you go to the drugstore, you almost can't find it in the appropriate dose. The appropriate dose is anywhere from about 0.5 milligram to 1.5 milligrams. Maybe top out at 3. That's about as high as you want to go. But when you go to CVS, you find gummies at 10 and 20 milligrams. And people tell me all the time, oh, I can't take melatonin, it gives me crazy dreams. Number one side effect of overdosing on melatonin is crazy dreams.
On this point of going to a supermarket and picking some melatonin off the shelf, FDA approval and the lack of FDA approval in melatonin means that there's less clarity on what's actually in there, right?
That's exactly right.
I was reading about a study in 2024 where they looked at different melatonins that were found on the shelf.
And they found very different things inside the bottle.
Very, very different things. They looked at an analysis of melatonin gummies marketed for children and found that the actual amount of melatonin ranged from 0% to 667% of what was listed on the label.
Yep, see it all the time.
And in the same study, some melatonin gummies contain absolutely no melatonin, while others contained hazardous contaminants like CBD that were not disclosed on the label.
Yep.
Because melatonin is sold as a supplement in the US and not a drug, the FDA does not test it for safety or accuracy before it hits the shelf.
You are 100% correct, and that's a huge problem. Just think about that for a second. I mean, the market for melatonin is tremendous. It's huge in the supplement world, yet there's no regulation whatsoever. Nobody knows about these interaction effects, which are big, big, big. And by the way, most people are using it wrong. There's really only 3, maybe 4 different instances when melatonin would be useful. I would use melatonin for jet lag, and we should talk about jet lag. I would use melatonin for shift workers, right? So for people who work, night shift, who have to sleep during the daytime, they would be excellent people to use melatonin. People with a melatonin deficiency, a lot of people don't think about that, but right around age 50 is when, if you're going to have a melatonin deficiency, we start to see that happening for people. Is it their ability to produce melatonin begins to decline? So I think those 3 situations absolutely would be on board for melatonin. Believe it or not, there's some data to show that in ADD and ADHD, there's some use for melatonin, and then also for a very specific sleeping disorder called REM behavior disorder.
We're going melatonin crazy as a society, aren't we?
Absolutely. We don't need it. It's completely unnecessary.
I was looking at the data. 1999, 0.4% of Americans said they used melatonin. Today, it's almost 30%. So that's 70 million
messed up.
That's crazy.
Dude, that is problematic. And again, they have no idea what it's doing to them, right? And they're giving it to their kids. Like, I can't think of anything worse for a young female developing body than to add a contraceptive when it's not necessary. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
The rise in children overdosing on sleep gummies is the fastest growing trend in poison control data.
Yeah, I think it's like almost 600% increase or something crazy like that for kids who have who've overdosed on melatonin. Like there was a study that came out maybe a year and a half ago, showed like almost 600% of increase in overdoses just for kids. Like, that's pretty messed up when you start to think about it. And here's the thing, kids know how to sleep, right? You just gotta stop. You just gotta let them sleep, right? You gotta give them some parameters. Here's when you go to bed. Here's when you wake up. Don't get out of bed. Don't come in and ask for 12 glasses of water. All the stuff that goes on there. I mean, this isn't hard.
So when and how? So I used melatonin once in my life.
Okay.
And I've got to be honest, it fucking worked.
Yeah. Oh. If you use it right, it works, bro.
And it was actually about a week ago because I'd been struggling with lots of jet lag. I'd flown from the UK to LA to UK to LA to Cape Town to the Middle East to wherever, and I was getting to bed every night at like 4 or 5 a.m. and still waking up at having to wake up at about 10. So I thought, I need to correct this.
Yes,
it's been going for 2 weeks and I need to correct this.
Absolutely.
So I thought, fuck it, I'm gonna cave. I took the melatonin and corrected it.
Yes, it does. So let's talk about jet lag. So it's a bit of a story, but I got involved with a company that has got an app, which is very interesting. Okay. I don't have any, I'm not invested in the company, just to be clear, but it's one of my close friends who developed this. So I'm kind of a space nerd.
It's not Time Shifter.
It is Time Shifter.
Oh, really?
It is.
I would also like an affiliation with Time Shifter.
No problem.
I used to be,
Yeah, I will get you that. So here's what's fascinating is the way the whole Time Shifter started was, so aren't you kind of a space guy? Like,
I
aren't you
love space. I'm an investor in SpaceX and.
Okay,
space,
so
yeah.
I'm a space nerd myself, right? So the ISS is moving around at 17,500 miles an hour around the Earth. It's cooking.
ISS meaning the International Space Station.
Yeah. It's whipping around, right? Can you imagine how many sunrises and sunsets they get in a given day?
How many?
Every 2 hours. So they basically get 12.
Wow.
Think about how messed up their circadian rhythms would be from seeing the sunrise and seeing it go and seeing it gets really messed up, right? And by the way, you don't want to make big mistakes in the space station. Like, you don't leave the airlock open, or shit like that. Like, that's when things get really, really bad. So they called down to NASA and they were like, hey, we got a problem up here. Everybody wants to use the lab at the same time. Like, people are seeing the sun. Like, what's going on? So they called a buddy of mine named Stephen Lockley over at Harvard. Stephen is arguably one of the best circadian researchers in the world. Super smart dude. And he was like, well, let's send up a lighting kit and let's create shifts on the space station. Right? So that's exactly what they did. So they set up a lighting kit. I think it was on the Columbia shuttle before it got decommissioned. And they set up lighting, and then they set up timing for lighting. And so there was a morning shift, a mid shift, and a night shift for the astronauts. Once they got the algorithm working, they brought it down terrestrially, and they put it into the Mercedes-Benz Formula One race car team. So they gave it to Lewis Hamilton. Right? Because when you think about it, think about what he has to do. Right? He's on or off the podium on hundredths of a second. Right? And he's in a different country every 3 weeks, right? So this guy's got jet lag like you wouldn't believe. And so once we were able to get it going there, then we created the Time Shifter app. And so it's an app, you can get it on your phone. And what you do is you put in your flight number and it automatically pulls up the flight and knows where you are. This is why I think that jet lag is a math problem. Let me explain. We learned about 20 years ago that when you take a certain frequency and intensity of light and you shine it at somebody's eyes, you can move their circadian rhythm by about 8 hours if you want to.
Their circadian rhythm again being
that internal biological clock, the time when your body wants to go to bed and wants to wake up. We can actually move that by about 8 hours with about 10,000 lux, which is the brightness level of a blue light, particular frequency of light, okay? So when you hit that, if you start in LA and you're going to Manchester, right? And there's a big time difference, and you know what time it is in LA and you know what time it is in Manchester, it's a math problem of when do you get the light. So that's what Time Shifter is it determines when do you need that light. And then on the times when you don't need light, it has you use caffeine, right? Or to keep you awake, or if it's time to sleep, then you use a little bit of melatonin. That's when melatonin becomes so valuable.
It also tells you when to eat.
It does. It tells you all of these different things. And it's kind of nice because it kind of shows up on your phone. It's like, hey, do this then, do this then. And it works really, really well. But yeah, Time Shifter is one of my favorites. I've been using it literally for 15 years.
Wow.
And it solves jet lag, bro. Like, we're going to fix that for you. No question.
How often should someone be having melatonin? Is there like too often? Because some people literally have it every day.
Yeah, I would argue it's a bad idea. So if you have a melatonin deficiency, sure, have it every day. But, or if you're a shift worker, probably. But I use it only for jet lag myself. Otherwise, I'm not using it on the regular.
And what's the risk there of having it every day? Is it?
It's a good question. So when you start to look at melatonin overdose and you start to look at melatonin on board for long periods of time, there's been some conflict in the research. There's a group of people that say if you stay on melatonin for extended periods of time, your body stops producing it. There's another group of people that have looked at research and have said, actually, that's not the case. So right now, we have studies that lead out to about a year or so on melatonin, and when you stop their melatonin production after they've been taking it for a year, their body seems to start back up, no problem. It's different than testosterone, right? So with testosterone, we know that when men start taking testosterone, their body actually stops producing it. With melatonin, that does not appear to be the case, but we don't have studies that go out past, that year long. And so if somebody's been taking melatonin every day for 5-10 years, you kind of start to wonder what's going to happen. Also, don't forget that melatonin is different than the melatonin that's actually produced in your head.
I think it was Andrew Huberman, who I was speaking to a couple of weeks ago, that was saying about not giving kids an overdose of melatonin. And I think afterwards I was doing some research on it, and I read something that said it has an impact on puberty, potentially.
So in high dosages, melatonin is a contraceptive.
So that would pause puberty?
Exactly. Or change it.
Oh.
And ways we may or may not know. So I agree with Andrew on that point that, again, Melatonin is not something that kids need unless you've got kids on the spectrum, which is, again, where I find it to be helpful, and I've treated kids with that before. But generally speaking, I don't put melatonin on anybody under the age of 18.
Am I more likely to have nightmares if I'm having lots of melatonin?
If you're overdosing, you are.
Why?
So the number one side effect of a high dose of melatonin is super vivid dreams and then eventually nightmares.
Why?
I'm not really sure. If I was garnering a guess, then what I would say is that part of the reason why that you have crazy vivid dreams from melatonin is because it probably does put you into REM sleep a little bit quicker than you normally would and might keep you there a little bit longer. I don't have any data to support that, so I want to be clear. This is more of a hypothesis on my end, but that might make intuitive sense to me.
Just done a quick search.
Sure.
You're right. It says it keeps you in REM sleep a little bit longer and more intensely.
There you go.
This leads to highly vivid dreams or night terrors, which paradoxically makes you wake up feeling more exhausted.
Right. I can't count the number of people who tell me, I need to go back to sleep because I'm so exhausted from my dreams.
Oh, wow.
Right?
So let's finish off on these supplements then.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about melatonin, which, like I said, select usage. A couple of other ones that we've got here, one of them is valerian, right? So when we talk, valerian is probably the most studied. It's a root. It's called the valerian root. But to be clear, it's an anti-anxiety medication, right? So what it is it helps lower your level of anxiety. And that is the reason why it has a tendency to work. Interestingly, when you look at the data, it works better when combined with hops, like what you'd find in beer. So a lot of times when you're looking for a preparation, you should look for valerian plus hops as the preparation. Also, we should talk for a second about supplements. A lot of people don't understand this, but a lot of people will put a whole bunch of different supplements together and put it into a capsule. I don't think that's the best idea. I think you should have single ingredient supplementation.
Why?
Well, number one, you get the correct dose, so you know it's actually working for you. There's a lot of companies out there that are that make a powder or something, and they put a bunch of stuff in it, and they put just enough in there to be able to say it on the ingredient profile, but not enough for it to actually do any good for the patient. So I like using single ingredient supplement profiles because I know exactly how much of each thing that I'm going to get in there, and I can make sure that it's the correct dosage for what the person needs. So I prefer single ingredient supplementation.
Okay, so valerian.
Yep, valerian root.
Not going to mess up my hormones?
Nope, it's not going to mess up your hormones.
Going to help me with overthinking?
Probably not. What it'll probably do is slow your thinking down a little bit, depending upon how much of it you take. I think if you're looking for something that's going to slow down your thinking, then I would say we don't have the thing here, but it's called GABA, G-A-B-A, gamma aminobutyric acid. So this is a substance that your body makes. It's kind of the brakes of the brain, and you can buy it as a supplement. I've had several people use that, and that seems to help calm people down in the evening times.
What about ashwagandha or whatever it's called?
Ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha.
Exactly, I just kind of like saying it. So here's my theory on supplementation is the first thing I tell people to do is go do blood work, okay? What deficiencies do you have? Fix your deficiencies first. Before we start going to the valerians and the melatonins of it all, if you're deficient in vitamin D, magnesium, iron, fix those three things first. Dude, I can't tell you, I've got 15% of the people that show up at my doorstep, we do blood work on, and all I do is fix their deficiencies, and their sleep magically gets better.
What are some of the surprising things, though, that you discover? Like blood sugar, like diabetes, that impacts sleep, no?
It absolutely does. I also think that a lot of people who have uncontrolled diabetes, it wakes them up in the middle of the night because their blood sugar gets so low, and then they're hungry in the middle of the night, then they have eating in the middle of the night, then they have the sleep eating syndrome, which is kind of a pain.
There's this one here that I've never heard of before. What's this one?
It's called tryptophan. So L-tryptophan in particular. So tryptophan is the substance that we find in turkey that has a tendency to make people sleepy. However, when you really look at the data, you'd have to eat a 46-pound turkey in order to get enough tryptophan to make you sleep. Even in my best days in college, dude, I couldn't eat a 46-pound turkey, okay? Same holds true with milk. Tryptophan is the thing in warm milk that supposedly makes people sleepy, but once again, you'd have to drink almost a half a gallon of warm milk, which is kind of disgusting, in order to do it. Tryptophan can be helpful for people if you have a tryptophan deficiency, but it's definitely something that lowers a little bit of anxiety. It can make you feel a little bit sleepy, but it is a naturally occurring amino acid in your system.
Calcium?
So calcium turns out is interesting because when you mix calcium with magnesium, it's easier to absorb. So for some people, what we've discovered is if you have a magnesium deficiency and you fix the magnesium deficiency, in many cases it can actually help with overall sleep. And calcium is one of the things that can be added to it that helps with absorption. Now, unfortunately, the big problem is that there are 13 different kinds of magnesium out there. And so people don't know what's been studied and what hasn't. So I'm here to let you know there's only a couple of brands out there that have actually been studied for magnesium. The ones I like is there's one called magnesium threonate, which is made by a company called Magtein. They actually have a published research study in the journals. That's why I mentioned their brand name. I have no association with them. There's also another company called Upgraded Formulas. They make a magnesium. And it's kind of funny story is the guy who runs Upgraded Formulas told me, he says, my magnesium is the best in the world. I can make anybody fall asleep. And I said, hey, you want to put your money where your mouth is? Let's do a clinical trial. He handed me a check for 75 grand. I went and did a clinical trial, and he was right. His magnesium really made people sleep better.
What is magnesium doing?
So we're not 100% sure. In the deficient people, it's obviously clearing up the deficiency of magnesium, and then magnesium is used in about, I think, almost 300 different functions in the body. So it probably lets the body work more efficiently, and probably that helps to overall sleep. But I'm not convinced that we have the whole mechanism of action worked out. I will tell you that when people take magnesium, they tell me that they introspectively feel calmer. And we definitely know that it can definitely help cause a relaxation response in the musculature. So I think that might have something to do with it.
Why did you bring a banana and a knife in a teapot?
This is my favorite way to get magnesium.
Oh.
A lot of people want to know, how should I take my supplements? I'm tired of taking a fistful of pills every morning, Michael. There's these powders. Like, what's the best way? The best way, so number one, supplementation is when you're not getting all of the things, the vitamins and minerals that you need from your food. So the best place to get it from is food, generally speaking. Turns out magnesium is one of the best ones, but it's problematic because we have to eat our magnesium. Our body doesn't actually produce it themselves. And by the way, you can eat a bushel of kale and still not get enough magnesium, because here in the United States, the soil has been over-tilled, which means the magnesium isn't in the soil, so it's not coming up through the root stalks and allowing people to have it. So a lot of people require magnesium supplementation. Believe it or not, between magnesium and vitamin D, I'd say we've probably covered most of America in terms of having a deficiency. Bananas are loaded with magnesium, but it turns out it's not the fruit, it's the peel itself. So no, I'm not gonna make you eat the peel.
I was gonna say.
Don't worry. So I developed a recipe that I call banana tea. All it is a regular old banana. So what you do is you cut off the stem, right, and cut it in half, and then you drop it in to some boiling water. Okay, so we've already done this, right? And you can see the banana has turned brown, right? It's been soaking in the boiling water. So it's not really tea, it's just basically hot banana water. But with the banana, from the skin, you also get these things called phytosteroids that actually help you absorb magnesium better than if you just had it from a supplement. So you have to really like bananas. My daughter says it's very banana-y, Dad. The flavor, I mean.
Oh, it does smell like banana.
I'm telling you, if you like bananas.
It's nice.
I know.
It's nice.
And you can use this as an evening ritual, and you can make banana tea and have it in the evening with, a biscuit or what have you, and have a night and read a book and just be chill.
How do I know the magnesium's actually in there?
Because it came through from the steeping in the water.
Oh, okay.
We could test it if we want, but I can assure you it's in there. You need to leave it in there for about 5 minutes, and we've been talking for a while, so I'm pretty sure it's there.
And how long before sleep to get those effects?
I would say about 25, 30 minutes. You don't want to have too much, by the way, because then you're going to have to wake up and pee. So try, if you can, to be able to have it about 30, 40 minutes before bed.
So you can put it in anything. So a lot of people have different types of tea, so you could just use that as the water instead.
Yeah. Oh, without question. Actually, that would be a really good idea. You could, if you mix it with like a fruit tea, like an herbal fruit tea, that would be really delicious.
Are there any other supplements that you do encourage people to take if they're struggling with sleep that we haven't talked about yet?
We haven't talked about vitamin D, and that's a big one. So it turns out that vitamin D is a circadian pacemaker. So when light comes into your eyeballs, it helps change your whole circadian system. And if light is coming in for a certain amount of time, about 15 minutes, your body will start to produce vitamin D. Vitamin D does a whole host of important things to your body, but most importantly from a sleep perspective is it helps regulate melatonin and when your body produces it. So by taking vitamin D every day or getting 15 minutes of sunshine, either way, you're gonna be in better shape. So like as an example, my morning routine that I have all my patients do is I have them, when they wake up in the morning, I have them go outside if it's nice out, sit in a chair and have 15 deep breaths merely to wake up the respiratory system, then 15 ounces of water, because once again, remember, you're dehydrated, and then 15 minutes of sunshine. So they can do all of this together at the same time, and it's a nice way to wake up in the morning.
I don't know any founder who started their business because they like doing admin. But whether you like it or not, it's a huge part of running a business successfully. And it's something that can quickly become all-consuming, confusing, and honestly, a real tax because you know it's taking your attention away from the most important work. And that's why our sponsor, Intuit QuickBooks, helps my team streamline a lot of their admin. I asked my team about it, and they said it saves them around 12 hours a month. 78% of Intuit QuickBooks users say it's made running their business significantly easier. And Intuit QuickBooks' new AI agent works with you to streamline all of your workflows. They sync with all of the tools that you currently use. They automate things that slow the wheel in the process of your business. They look after invoicing, payments, financial analysis, all of it in one place. But what is great is that it's not just AI. There's still human support on hand if you need it. Intuit QuickBooks has evolved into a platform that scales with growing businesses. So if you want help getting out of the weeds, out of admin, just search for Intuit QuickBooks now. This is something that I've made for you. I realize that the Diary of a CEO audience are strivers, whether it's in business or health. We all have big goals that we want to accomplish. And one of the things I've learned is that when you aim at the big goal, it can feel incredibly psychologically uncomfortable because it's kind of like being stood at the foot of Mount Everest and looking upwards. The way to accomplish your goals is by breaking them down into tiny, small steps. And we call this in our team the 1%. And actually, this philosophy is highly responsible for much of our success here. So what we've done so that you at home can accomplish any big goal that you have is we've made these 1% diaries, and we released these last year and they all sold out. So I asked my team over and over again to bring the diaries back, but also to introduce some new colors and to make some minor tweaks to the diary. So now we have a better range for you. So if you have a big goal in mind and you need a framework and a process and some motivation, then I highly recommend you get one of these diaries before they all sell out once again. And you can get yours now at thediary.com, where you can get 20% off our Black Friday bundle. And if you want the link is in the description below. So let's talk about waking up in the morning.
Sure.
Morning routines.
Yep.
A lot of people talk about what's the perfect morning routine. Do you need to have a morning routine? What's your take on that?
So it depends upon how disciplined you want to be, and it depends upon how much time you have. I can tell you what my morning routine is because it's very specific, and I've discovered that it works really, really well for me. So I wake up naturally somewhere between 6:10 and about 6:25 or so. My body just seems to naturally wake up. I do 15 minutes of red light therapy. So I have a red light in my office that I sit in front of, and I do my meditation at the same time in the morning time. So I have about 15 minutes of meditation. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll sit on the floor and the boys will come and sit on my lap, and then we'll all meditate together. I know that sounds a little weird. Then we do a 15-minute walk. I try not to have any music or any telephone or anything like that up until this point. I put the dogs away and then I hit the gym. I'm at the gym from about 8 till about 9:30, 10 o'clock. I do a sauna every day afterwards, and then I'm in front of my desk by about 10:30, and that's just when I have my breakfast. And so I make the same breakfast almost every morning. I do ground turkey with a third of a pound of ground turkey, 3 eggs, and broccoli, and I put it all into a skillet, and I make it every morning.
Do you use any sleep trackers?
In the past, I've used a few of them. I try them out because a lot of my patients try them out. I think if I was gonna be looking at them, I think the Oura Ring probably does the best job. I really don't think they've gotten there quite yet, because remember, depth of sleep is based on brainwaves, and it's hard to get brainwaves from your finger. right? And so what they're doing is they're creating a proxy. So they're looking at heart rate or oxygen or pulse or something along those lines, and then saying, okay, when Stephen's at this pulse, we think he's in REM sleep, so we're gonna label every time that REM sleep, when in fact they don't really know because they're not measuring your brain waves. So I think until we get to the point where we can measure brain waves from distally, I think we'll have a little bit better shot at it. However, there's some interesting things that are going on kind of in the sleep tracker world, and some people get a little too into the whole tracking of it all, if you know what I mean. Like, I can't count the number of people that are like, oh my God, Dr. Bruce, you know, this says I only slept 14 minutes last night, like what do I do? And I'm like, well, number one, how much did you sleep the night before? And they say, oh, 16 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, let's check you tomorrow. They come back tomorrow, it's even worse, 12 minutes. I'm like, oh, you're fine. Like, what? I'm like, look, it's being consistently inaccurate. There's no way you only got 14 minutes of deep sleep, right? That's just not how the body works, right? But if you got 14 minutes, and then one night you look at your score and it's 407 minutes, I wanna know what happened on that night.
My friend was a big fan of Whoop, so he told me to try Whoop. I tried a Whoop. The most, I think, critical thing it's done for me is it allowed me to create some understanding of like causation and like associations with my sleep. So one of the ones that completely changed my life when I first wore my Whoop, which by the way I'm an investor in the company, so I have to disclaimer there, was I didn't realize how impactful sleep alcohol was on my sleep.
It's massive,
like it blew my mind because I had one glass of wine. And then the bloody Whoop thing said, you're either really sick, really stressed, or you drank alcohol. And then I watched a video online where they compared all of the devices to the hospital grade stuff.
Polysomnography.
And the Whoop 4 was the closest to the hospital grade. And then I contacted the company and said, could I invest, et cetera, et cetera. I've also tried like 8 Sleep and...
I would argue that temperature, like if we're talking about what is the easiest thing to manipulate to change your sleep, either good or bad, temperature is it. And people don't realize it, but you can change the temperature in your bedroom, even in your bed, and you can change the quality of your sleep. You mentioned 8 Sleep. That's a company that has a topper type of thing that can change the temperature underneath the covers. There's also taking a look at the accoutrement that's on, so pillows, sheets, comforters, all of those things. But if you can get your body to cool down, your body will go down and get into deeper stages of sleep. If you can stay cool versus bumping up and down all night long, let's say you're a woman in menopause, right? That becomes highly disruptive. And so by being able to keep a consistent temperature stimulus to the body, it ends up sleeping a whole lot better.
Dreams.
Let's talk about dreams.
People are so fascinated by dreams.
Aren't they? I love it.
But so little is known about dreams.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, here's the thing. Dreams have been studied, honestly, since the dawn of time. If you look in the Bible, you will see that people are talking about dreams. If you look at ancient texts, people are wondering about these crazy movies that are going on in my head, right? When you start to look at dreams, here's the thing that I will tell you is dreams mean something to the dreamer. They don't necessarily mean something to somebody who is not the dreamer. And so when I do dream work, so to be clear, just to take a step back, I took a 1.5 years and I became a dream therapist. So what does that mean? What is that even? Is that even a thing? So dream therapy, by the way, is not dream interpretation. That is not, here's a symbol, here's what that means. Dream therapy is where you use dreams in the therapeutic context to help people with things like depression and anxiety. Let me give you an example, a nightmare, right? So when somebody has, let's say somebody was in an active theater of war and they watched one of their friends, God forbid, something terrible happened to them. And that image is now in their head. And now they constantly have this image over and over and over. But what happens is they're going, and they wake up. They're going, and they wake up. We talked a little bit about it earlier, that dreams are emotional metabolism. Right? So dreams are where you work out all of these different things that are going on in your head and kind of become okay with them, so that way next day you can kind of move forward and keep doing your thing.
Do we need to explain why we dream? Because I think that's the big sort of...
Sure. So there's a couple of theories. One theory is that this is a great stage for practice, right? So we dream about things that we're eventually gonna try in the real world, and so we get a chance to practice them in our head beforehand to make sure we don't kind of screw the whole thing up. So there's that whole idea of being able to kind of work stuff out in my head. Then there's the processing idea that we talked about before, where this is emotional metabolism. So
therapy.
Right, exactly. It's like you go to therapy every single night. Actually, it's a really good way to think about it. I hadn't thought about it like that, but I think I'm going to use that. I'm going to take that from you.
Okay.
I like that. Dreams are therapy every single night because they really are. You're really moving through a lot of that emotionality. Some people think dreams are complete nonsense. Some people think that's just some crazy movie in your head and it's just this after effect of your brain moving into a different mode and who knows what it could mean. I find that one hard to believe myself.
Because humans don't do anything
I don't think so.
that isn't for some type of survival benefit.
For sure.
It's a waste of energy or,
Yeah, I agree. And so if we looked at it from an evolutionary perspective, like what is the evolutionary purpose of dreams? I would argue that it probably has something to do with emotions and being able to move through some emotionally difficult times. And or it's an early warning system. A lot of people dream things and it helps them understand something else that's going on in their life. You ever heard the thing people say, before I make this big decision, I want to sleep on it?
Yeah.
Right? This is what they're doing is when they sleep on it, all these desperate pieces of information come together and work themselves so that you can come to a solution. So I think the other reason that we dream is to come to solutions and to create innovation.
That tracks in my life. I can be going to bed really thinking about something quite like, remunerating about something to the point that it's like overthinking and
Right.
it's a problem, it's stressing me out. I can get 8 hours sleep and wake up and it's like the clouds have parted.
Right. It's like magic.
It's like magic.
It's great.
And I only realized this in the last
I
couple of
can
years
be-
when, my businesses got bigger and there was more problems to work through.
Right.
That like actually I could use sleep as a weapon against the problem.
Absolutely.
Versus trying to stay up all night and solve the problem, I could focus on the sleep to solve the problem.
Yeah, I do it all the time. And what you can actually do, it's called priming, is you can think about the problem in a way before you go to sleep, and then it triggers your brain to think about the problem while you're sleeping.
What, do you write it down or do you?
There's a lot of different ways you can go about doing it. So for example, what I have some people do is write down everything they can remember in their dream beforehand, before they come to therapy. But what you can do is something different. If you want to change your dream, you write it all down, but that you change the ending. Okay? And you read it several times before bed, and it will actually change your dream.
So what am I writing down before bed then?
So let's say you had a scary dream, okay? You're walking through a haunted house and something terrible is going to happen when you walk out the back door.
The night before?
Yeah, the night before. Then I have you write all of that down, and then when you come into session with me, I say, okay, we're going to change the ending, because at the very end, you walked out